Hello lovely people. Today is a very exciting day because finally after so long I will be replacing the center console sub that I have that's basically bridging the gap between the mid bass in the kicks and the IB sub. So I finally managed to choose and purchase the correct sub for the correct enclosure, because the main thing is this enclosure that I have is a sealed half a cube, so 15 liters, maybe a bit less, 14, 13 liters, and not every sub can play in that volume. So at the moment, as some of you know, I have a Scanspeak woofer, not a subwoofer. So, and from the name as well, you already know what kind of subwoofer it is. So I'm gonna pull the current woofer out and I'm gonna compare it to the Dayton. Then I'm gonna put the Dayton in, I'm gonna take some measurements and see if I will have improvement. I think I will have improvement. But yeah, let's see. I took the woofer out, that's the enclosure. I have a cheap Chinese grill on it for a few pounds. And one thing I want to mention, because I will be addressing this later on, why I didn't choose any kind of sub. So this enclosure that I have is like 20 centimeters. I don't know how many inches, like I have no idea how many inches. 20 centimeters wide, is double baffled, and like the depth, it's not, I have like maybe 15 centimeters of depth, mounting depth, and that's why I couldn't choose a lot of other subs, just because they were had much bigger mounting depth, and this one is like, it's nothing, this woofer. So that's was one of the limiting factors, and I can see now that I think the holes are not gonna line up with the Dayton, so probably I'll just need to drill new holes and just replace these there. Well, yeah, okay, let's take this inside and let's compare it with the Dayton. Before I actually open up the Dayton subwoofer for comparison, I want to explain why I chose specifically this subwoofer over anything else. The main thing was two main things. Number first is the mounting depth that I showed you previously, that I couldn't mount anything longer than 15 centimeters, which is 6 inches, something like that, 6 inches. Anything over 6 inches mounting depth or 6 inches, I cannot mount, because I need to leave a little gap for the motor to breathe, because most motors have like a venting pole in the back. So you cannot put it like literally next to the wall. You have to have some kind of a gap for venting. So that's number one. Number two is the actual volume of the box, because as I mentioned, it's half a cube, and not very few subs can play in half a cubic foot. So I did some modeling. I actually modeled probably like 50 different woofers and subwoofers, and I narrowed down to these three. So the black line is this current Scanspeak in this particular box, and then I have orange Helix K10, which is a 10-inch Helix woofer. That woofer subwoofer is optimal to work in extremely small enclosures, 12 liters, 15 liters, exactly what I have. So it's optimal for that. And this is maximum SPL, not transfer function. So this is how much I could potentially gain in volume if I would replace it with any of those subwoofers. So Helix, it's a very good option because it was like 120 pounds, super cheap, but it's a budget. It doesn't have anything very nice going about it. It doesn't have even inductance mentioned in the specs. So I had to email Helix, and they replied that the inductance, I think it's close to 2 millihenries, or just over 2, something about 2-ish. Then the second option was Audison Voce AV10. It's in all the range. It's above. It's basically is playing the transfer function frequency response is very similar to this woofer, which is exactly what I need, but it's playing louder. It's the maximum SPL is louder than the Scanspeak, so that was a good option. However, the mounting depth is I think it's 145 or 150, so it's like literally no gap between the wall and the magnet, the motor. And another thing, it costs £350, so it's very expensive. And the third option was the Dayton. So Dayton has the green line, has the most low end. I don't really need the low end, but it has the most of it, so that is good. It has the most volume and it fits, and again it's optimal for that space for half a cubic foot, so it's perfect. And it cost me like £220, shipping, tax, import duty and everything else, because nobody sells it in the UK, so I had to import it. But yeah, it's fine. So that's the response. Now let's open up the box and see what's inside. So it's gonna be like a mini review, but I don't want to call it a review because it's just, you know, I had to open it before because my curiosity couldn't wait. I had to open it before. So let's take it out. It is bloody heavy. Oh, sorry. Let me put this back. Okay. So this is basically a comparison, kind of a comparison, but not between two subwoofers. It's a comparison between a woofer and a subwoofer. Basically, what is the difference between a woofer and a subwoofer? Because like in car audio, you have subwoofers, mid-bass, mid-range, and tweeters, widebands, and blah, blah, blah. But nobody's using the word woofer. Woofer is kind of reserved for a home audio. Because the difference between a subwoofer and a woofer, basically the frequency range that it plays. Subwoofer is optimized to play the low end, and the woofer it kind of goes low, but it plays up to a kilohertz, maybe 2 kilohertz, depending on the size. So this is a 10-inch. Both of them are 10 inches. They're slightly different. They look slightly different. We have 10 inches, same size. Now the motor is very different. As you can see, the Dayton has 2 massive slugs and Scanspeak has only 1. And the power ratings are different as well. So let's have a look at some basic specs and how are these two different. So I printed the parameters from, alright, let's do like this, yeah? So the main differences between these two, apart from the size and everything else, is the compliance. Where is it? Let me find it. And VAS. So Scanspeak, where is it? Compliance, the CMS, 0.9, and VAS is 156. The Dayton compliance is 0.32, so that's a third, 0.9, 0.3, and VAS is, where is it? This one, 54. So again, a third. So basically, in very basic terms, that means that Scanspeak is 3 times softer. It has a very soft suspension. And I think this Scanspeak, because I bought it second hand, I think it has a bit of a spider sag. I don't know, it's not going to be visible, but yeah. So it has a very soft suspension, whereas this, it's much stiffer. Not as stiff as a lot of different subwoofers, because you have like the SPL Sundowns and stuff that can take 5K. Those are extremely stiff. This is not as stiff, but this is very The surround is very soft. It's much thicker surround. Yeah. The other thing that surprised me a lot is the, where is it? Affecting SD. So the cone area of the driver. So the Scanspeak has 350 square centimeters and the Dayton has 356. So by looking at this, it looks like Scanspeak has a bigger cone, but in reality, Dayton has in a few square centimeters. So that's great, because if you combine SD and X-Max, which is 12 millimeters, and the Scanspeak has only 6, so half. So basically, this can displace twice as much air compared to the Scanspeak. Yeah. And the main thing that is connected to all the other parameters like QTS, it has a very small QTS, the Scanspeak. The main thing is the optimal box size for these two drivers. So this woofer likes a big box. Yeah, it's optimal to work. I think it's even mentioned here. Yeah. Closed box, 67 liters, which is, I think, 2 cubic feet. So it's optimal to work in 2 cubic feet closed, sealed, and what's almost 4 cubic feet ported. Yeah. And I've put it in half a cube. So it's extremely not optimal. And basically this woofer was really struggling. It was playing exactly the range that I need, but in doing so, it was extremely struggling because it has a soft suspension and it's not designed for that. Whereas Dayton is exactly for that. It can play in extremely small enclosures. And another thing, where is it? Triple shorting ring motor for ultra low distortion. So the LE, the inductance of the Dayton woofer is just below 1 millihenry. The Scan had, I think, 0.7. Yeah, so it's a tiny bit more, very similar, has a lot of shorting, 3 shorting rings, triple shorting ring, which is amazing, and extremely few car audio subs, especially cheaper ones, offer shorting rings, unless you go to the high end, like, I don't know, Morel Titanium or whatever. Those are amazing with very low, even lower than this. But, you know, so it is a 350 watt. And let's just have a look. It is bloody heavy, and I love how it looks like. So this sounds like plastic, and this, I think it's aluminium, or maybe both aluminium, but it's really rigid. It doesn't have a lot of surround. It has some surround, but it's not overly exposed. And my sub in the box is inside the box, so it has some space. The motor is kind of huge. Push terminals, great, because the Scan has these tabs that all home audio woofers have. So these tabs that you have to put it on there. Yeah. So motor, this, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, it's very heavy. Where is it? Here, inside. I don't know if you'll be able to see this one. That's copper. So I think it might be one of the shorting rings. I don't know, maybe. I can see the coil. You can see the coil. Oh man, it's so heavy. You can see the coil through those. You know, be able to see. You can see the coil through those gaps. Coil, spider. And it's extremely heavy woofer. I don't know how much it weighs, but it's really heavy. So the thing that I said, yeah, it matches, but I think the holes, no, the holes are not gonna fit. So the Scan has a slightly bigger basket, slightly wider, because it's a big lip. As you can see, it has a lip. Oh, sorry. It has a lip like this, so it's a big lip. And the surround starts like here, so just behind that lip. Whereas Dayton, if I'm gonna hold it, oh, has a much smaller lip. And the cone is a bit more concave, so maybe that's why it has more cone area. So yeah, this is a very basic overview. What's the difference between a woofer and a subwoofer. Now what I'm going to do, I need to figure out how to drill those holes and to put this lovely thing, which has a depth of 12.5 centimeters. Yeah, so it has 12.5, which is 5 inches and a half, 6 inches of mounting depth. So basically I will have 1 inch space for the motor to breathe, which is spot on, amazing. So now I'm going to put it on. I'm going to take some measurements and then I'm going to compare the actual measurements of these subs. I'm tired. I put the sub in. It's bloody heavy and it's like you have to keep it sideways. And you know what? Look. Let me put the mic closer. It's leaking air. So because basically it's very tight. There's a gap. I mean, there's a lip, but tight. So I need to now remove it and put another gasket inside to make it totally airtight. So let me show you what I mean. So the subwoofer itself has a small gasket, but it's not as thick. And I have it here for the old, because old woofer was much bigger. So you can see the where is it? You can see the indents for the old woofer were there. And basically this woofer is up till here, basically. So I need to strip this one and put a new gasket there. And yeah, I didn't bother with machine bolt inserts because it's much closer to the edge, and there's no place for these, because for these you need to drill a 10 mil hole and there's no space. So I have these bolts, which is like, they're quite thick, 4 mil, 4.5 mil thickness. So they're thick bolts and it's 6 of them. It's gonna be holding. So now I need to remove the gasket and put it back in. Finally, I have some data. I removed the subwoofer, put a new gasket. Actually, I had to put even 2 layers of gasket. Now it's fine. It's slightly leaking in one tiny place, but I'll have to call it for a day. That's it. It's fine by now. Okay, so measurements. This is the old Scanspeak that I had. And I'm gonna just overlay the target that I was set from 45 to 100 as a front sub, central console, let's say front. And when I tuned this one, I couldn't have my target very high because I would need to boost this part by like 5 dB, which is a lot, and especially at 40 hertz. So we're gonna ignore the top end. I'm gonna focus on this. And basically, if I put even higher just to match like the top end and the slope, so just few bands EQ here, the bottom end was missing from that woofer. Now the question is, did the Dayton improve this? And drum roll. Yes, it did. Again, the top end, let's ignore it. Let's focus on the bottom end. Let's zoom in slightly on the bottom end here. And we're gonna ignore this part because I don't know what that is. I don't think it's measuring. It's like 15 hertz. However, I was playing it on like a just testing on a sine tones, and it plays down to 15 hertz properly. So it might be correct, this measurement. I thought it's like maybe noise or something, but it plays down. It's like it plays down. I was so surprised how low it plays from such a small enclosure. And again, if I'm gonna overlay the target now, you can see, let's remove the Scanspeak. It perfectly matches the target. Basically, I can, yeah. So just remove this peak and put like a subsonic filter just to remove the bottom. And basically, you don't need any EQ at all. I'm so surprised. Like now, after some listening and testing, I set the crossover at, I think it was like 85 just to cut the top end, but in reality I would need to set like probably like 180, 200, and then use EQ to bring this down. And I set it at 30 at the bottom end and no EQ, and it plays perfectly. It plays nice. The only thing, the problem now is like literally the clearance, because it has more excursion, so I need to make sure I have enough clearance between the subwoofer and the seat. But I call this a success. So it plays high, surprisingly, like similar similar to the Scanspeak. Scan obviously plays higher. I didn't measure it near field. It's kind of pointless, but it plays high because I can hear like this peak at 2.6. That's probably cone breakup. It's like metallic. You can hear the metallic. If you play the full range, you can hear the metallic shriek at the top end. So that's this one. But yeah, so I gained. How much did I gain? Let's focus on this. Yeah, a bit less. I gained, like from here, 5 dB at the bottom end. Yeah. Here, like probably 2.5, 3 dB. So from 70 hertz, I want to say, from 67, from 70, let's say from 70 hertz and down, from 65, I'm gaining more and more and more. And here, like probably a 6 dB. If this is accurate, like 15 hertz, that's like 14 dB. So it's a massive, massive gain. And I still run it on a single channel of the 4-channel amplifier, so 110 watts, I think. So I need to bridge it later on, so it has double the power. But man, it plays so low. I could, like most of the music, if I would play it full range, I wouldn't need an IB sub for most music, but just for having fun IB. So I call this a massive, massive success. Great sub. Dayton, amazing sub. Plays very low, very clean. Well, we'll have to see the longevity in a car, but I think it's gonna be fine. Yeah, I love it. I'm gonna listen to some music now. Okay, I'll see you later, guys. Bye.